Alright, Dungeon Nerds, you're about ready to make a new character, and you're thinking of backstory. And what do you got? An orphan. So I see what you did there. It's unique, no one's ever did it before, but what if we didn't? What if we made a character that wasn't an orphan? Well, in this video, I'm going to give you some very definitive steps on how to do just that. Step number 1 might be the most important. Don't. Just don't do it. On a serious note, I feel like we've all been there. I certainly have. I have made characters that are orphans. I've played them and I've really enjoyed them, and they've had great stories. But it's just not the only way. It's a very overused trope. And I get it. I think a lot of people think of Dungeons and Dragons and role-playing games, and even video games as just pure escapism. And there's probably some truth to that. Like, reality's really tough sometimes, and it's really nice to step away. But I think it's more than that. I think we get to do more through RPGs than just step away. I think in a way it allows us to safely immerse ourselves in our troubles and our issues. When it comes to figuring out a character backstory, what drives someone to leave behind, I don't want to say like a comfortable life as a peasant, but what makes them step away from the norm to adventure, to go out in the world and risk their lives? In the way that Dungeons and Dragons is set up, adventurers don't start rich, so it's not just a thrill-seeking thing for them. There's many other ways they could try and make their way in the world, but they willingly, and sometimes unwillingly, go out and adventure and fight things that could kill them and get in very dangerous situations full of intrigue that the normal day-to-day peasant probably isn't seeing. And I think a lot of us, for that answer, default to trauma. I think a lot of backstories are made of trauma. I mean, look at comic books and superheroes. Like, trauma's where it's at. That's what our stories are about a lot of times. And there's nothing wrong with that. Just the opposite, I think that can really be a positive thing. And that goes back to that escapism thing I was just talking about. Dungeons and Dragons and other role-playing games give us a safe space where we can examine these traumas and these tragedies. It's not just about being able to kill the orc or the next big bad. It's about being able to overcome your own personal crap, which I think we all try to do and hope to do someday. But through RPGs, it makes it obtainable and measurable, and that's a wonderful thing. It's nice to think that your character, who doesn't have parents, could rise above what could be potentially a isolating, sterile environment and find friends, adventure, love, and wealth and success in the world. And that's completely valid, especially if that's something you want to work through yourself. That said, there's all kinds of other things you can explore, and sometimes it's nice to have your character have those connections. It's definitely more difficult at times, and sometimes simpler for all the same reasons. Does your character have a family? What does that look like for them? In Season 1 of the Isles of Samceris, I had the players do a lot of backstory working and figuring out their history, where they came from, who they came from. And I think one of my favorites was Afsana. And the reason being is that Afsana had family. Like, extensive family. Her whole tribe was largely related to her. Her brother was in charge of the tribe. Her younger brother was at odds with them. Like, her story, if you listen to the first season, is so much around family and the complicated tragedies that can bring. And then if we look at, say, Azulrath, well, actually, you haven't seen Azulrath's family yet, but he had it written in his too, and in Season 2, you just might. Then we had, like, say, Cordo. Cordo didn't have a family. Cordo did have an orphan backstory. But even in his orphan backstory, he wrote in connections. There were other orphans that he had talked to and formed alliances with in his youth, and things I don't want to go too much into here because of spoilers. Even Heskin, before we started recording the Isles of Samceris, Heskin was playing in Samceris, and his first adventure, his best friend died. It wasn't calculated, it was just a roll of the dice. But that happened and set the tone for everything to come. So one of the reasons I bring this up isn't just to push my podcast, though it is also to push my podcast, is that giving your characters these connections gives the DM something to latch onto and play with. It can really shape whole adventures. It's what you know, what's around you, and how that can be turned. It becomes more maybe a story of circumstance than a story of, well, I don't have anything holding me down, I might as well go adventure. Maybe you're adventuring because, as in Season 1, your family is at each other's throat, and it's likely to end in bloodshed if you don't do something, and that is a great motivator. And it's not to say that you can't find other things to process through D&D, because there's plenty. We live in a really rough world sometimes. I mean, let's talk anxiety, let's talk depression, let's talk love and loss. Those are all really valid things. If you want to go the loss route, maybe you lost a family member, but not all of them, and that can certainly change your mindset and push you into new things. And being as our characters are in control, you can let those things affect them as much or as little as you'd like. Maybe they are anxious. Maybe life is difficult for them at times, and you can decide when that changes and how that changes. And I think that's a beautiful thing, because it's empowering. I can decide this for this fictional character I created. Maybe I can decide it just a little bit for myself. Now, obviously nothing's that simple, and working with our own set of what have you comes with its own difficulties. But I think being able to visualize ways to overcome these things is important, and RPGs provide that. So that said, maybe don't make an orphan. Maybe make a character with tons of family. Maybe they come from a tribe. Maybe they're super close with a lot of people, and that's where their pain comes from. Don't worry. You'll find plenty of ways to add tragedy into a character without making it that their whole family's dead. There's plenty out there. If it feels nice for you, use your own. Use it to work through that. If it doesn't feel nice for you, stay away from that and kill some goblins and orcs and get your sword bloody and forget about all the crap for a little bit. There's no wrong way to play, even if playing means you're playing an orphan. If you want to listen to the podcasts that I was talking about earlier, you can do so on our website, crumblingkeep.com, and there's going to be a nice little link at the top of the page to take you there. Crumbling Keep presents The Isles of Samceres. We're working on Season 2, which is super exciting to me. I'm really excited to get back into it. I've been editing some old audio and getting ready to start recording again, and it's going to be a great time. In the meantime, thanks for listening. I'll go roll some dice. Love your fellow players. Be kind to each other. Go tell some stories together. And if you want to let me know what they're about, you can reach me at crumblingkeep@gmail.com. Thanks.